Flosstube. I'm Amy. I'm the Globetrotting Stitcher. I am here today with Gary, who is also a Globetrotting Stitcher. And it is really lovely to be back with you after, unfortunately, another long break. As we told you in our last video, we were getting ready to go on holiday in Kenya. We are home. We had a fantastic time, did a lot of great stuff, and if you follow me on Instagram, you probably saw a few posts over the course of our trip with some photos, but we'll tell you more about our trip later. And so if you're interested in hearing about what we did and where we went, stick around for that. But first, we're going to get into the stitching because I know that's what everybody's here for. Before we do, I also wanted just to mention I am now leaving here in just a couple more days, heading to London. I have some final meetings for the year for work, and I'm very much looking forward to staying an extra day or two to meet up with some UK-based stitchers. So I've mentioned it, and I know other stitchers have mentioned it on their channels. We're meeting up at the Ostrich Inn in Slough on December 8th. I think we're meeting from 12 o'clock to 4 o'clock. So if you're in the area and you would like to come and stitch with us, the more the merrier. We'd love to see you. So with that being said, let's get into the stitching because we have several WIPs to show you. So I am going to start with my Die Farben Venedig, or the Colors of Venice. This is the project that I took with me on our vacation, and you may get a sense of how much fun we were having on the vacation by how little stitching I accomplished. So this project is designed by Historische Stickmuster. I am stitching it on a piece of 36 count cream and sugar linen by Fiber on a Whim, and I am using all the called for Soie d'Alger silks. So the last time you saw this project, I had finished stitching the third row of rectangles, and so there's a light blue rectangle that I had finally finished stitching in that row, and then I had just gotten a tiny bit of a start on the bottom row of rectangles, stitching the dark blue rectangle in the bottom right corner. Here's where it is right now. You guys, I didn't even finish. I don't even know if I'm halfway done with the rectangle I worked on. I may have gotten 1,000 stitches in. I doubt that I did. This was a project I worked on some of our flights to and from Kenya. And then I think I had like one afternoon where I put in 50 stitches while we were actually on vacation. I just did not. We were busy, we were having a great time, and so I just didn't get much stitching done at all while we were gone. But every little bit counts, and so we'll just keep plugging away on this one. Unfortunately, I think given where I am on this, I may not meet my kind of personal goal of finishing this project by the end of the year, but never surrender. So maybe I can carve out some time in December to get this done. But that's where it is right now. Okay, the next WIP that I will show you is my Fancy Lady. I am stitching Rose of Sharon. When you have two projects that have the word rose in them, your brain sometimes like short circuits. So I'm stitching Rose of Sharon by Mirabilia. This is an out of print chart, and it was very graciously gifted to me by our friend Sarah, who is a longtime viewer of this channel. I am stitching my Rose of Sharon on a piece of 32 count Meadowview Lugana by Fabric Flare. It is amazing how, like, just a few weeks away, these things that automatically come to my memory are kind of like fading, so I have to refresh my mind. Anyway, I am stitching it on Meadowview Lugana by Fabric Flare, using all the called for DMC. So the last time you saw this project, I had worked on it for just a couple of days before going on a business trip, and so it hadn't seen much progress, but I had worked in the swag of greenery that's kind of coming down close to the midway point on the left column in the archway. I had filled in a little bit more of the hollyhocks that are to the right side of the piece, and then started stitching in the train of her skirt, starting stitching down into the train of her skirt, although certainly not at the bottom. And so here's where it is right now. Again, you can see this, it's a very similar story, not as much progress this time around. So I did fill in more of this greenery and swag up here, started getting into this decorative element that is mirrored over here on the archway. Stitched in more of the hollyhocks. I'm getting close to being done with the hollyhocks on this side, although there's some more green to fill in down here. And then just carried down more of her skirt. So I'm kind of trying to do is work my way toward the middle now, because we're in the bottom layers of her skirt. So I started stitching out the front boundary of the bottom of the gown and then continuing to work on this sort of train piece that will trail down here. So that's how she's looking. She's really beautiful. You might also notice there's just a couple of little stitches that I was also able to put in, starting the hollyhocks to the left of the piece. So really, really beautiful. And I'm really hoping that I will be able to find more time to work on this one going forward. I feel like this is a design that I just love, but it just seems like it always ends up being sort of the redheaded stepchild that gets neglected out of all my WIPs. So that's that one. Continuing the theme of pieces being neglected, the next project I'm going to show you is my seasonal project. This is a design by Le Thème d'une Tea, which is a French designer. And it is a chart that doesn't have a name. It has only a number, and that number is 2016. I call it Joyeux Noël because, as I've said in previous videos, the design itself says Joyeux Noël on it. So the last time you saw this project, I had made some decent progress on it. I had stitched in the word joyeux across the top. I had stitched in quite a bit more of, there's this beautiful kind of like spray of twigs with some little white flowers sprinkled through. I'd stitched in a fair bit of that, and had stitched in the reindeer, the adult reindeer, that's kind of in a central part of the piece. So here's where it is right now. So as you can see, I started stitching the word Noel. I've now finished stitching this whole kind of spray of twigs and flowers. I've finished the adult reindeer, I'm assuming it's a mom, and have stitched one of her baby reindeer. Why can I not think of what a baby reindeer is called? Is it a fawn? I don't know.
Chick.
It's a the reindeer chick. I started stitching the other one over here. You didn't think you were going to learn new things on this channel, but we know stuff. I'm almost finished stitching this pine cone here, and have started stitching in the two trees on the bottom of the design. So this project, if I had had another day or two on it, I would have finished it. But I picked it up for, I think, 2 or 3 days after we got back from Kenya, and was going to bed really early because was still really struggling with jet lag. And so again, this is a piece that it's just been a little bit neglected because I've had to cut into my rotation of stitching days on this several times now. So I'm actually, all things considered, I'm really happy with the amount of progress I made on it, considering how little time it has gotten. But I really like this. I am looking forward to having it finished the next time it comes up in rotation, and I think it's just lovely. I think it's just such an efficient elegance, a very simple elegance about the overall style of the design. So that is my Joyeux Noël. So enough from me for the moment. I'm gonna let Gary talk about what he's been working on.
Well, I have not been working on much because we simply were not here. We were someplace else, which we'll circle back to. I think people are saying that now. Or is that old now? Either way, we'll circle back to that. So the first one I'm going to show you is, sorry, I thought of something funny. The first one I'm going to show you is Louis Armstrong, and that's by Stitching Jewels Design. And it's stitched on 16 count white Aida. And I just happen to be using DMC black. You can use whatever color you like or whatever background you like. The last time that you saw this, I think I wasn't close to being done with page 1, but I was about halfway done with being page 1. But I did not work on this one till we got back, and even then it was only either, I think, 1 night or 2 nights, only 1 night. So I got some done, but not much. Now, instead of, well, this is the way it looks now. And I think earlier I was saying it resembled a can opener, but I think I'm getting to the crescent wrench stage right now. Well, actually like this. Anyway, at the crescent wrench stage, pretty soon though, it'll look more like a trumpet top, but still, ask a guy, that's a crescent wrench. Anyway, or a lady, right? Who cares, right? Anyway, so yeah, that's where I am with Louis Armstrong. I still have a lot to do. It will not be done by the end of the year. I don't know if it's going to be done by the end of 2025. It should be close, but I don't know. Anyway, so the next one that I'm working on is called Wonder Woman. It's by Cross Stitch Bay Etsy, and I'm stitching on 16 count pewter Aida with all but one of the called for DMC colors, and that's the color in her hair and the color in her pants, whatever you want to call them.
Hot pants.
Yeah, that's what they are. See, I wasn't going to say that because I wasn't. Anyway.
I did it for you.
Thank you. That was nice. Anyway, thanks. Here we go. Where was I? I was talking about Wonder Woman, right? Yeah. So anyway, her pants, it was more of an aqua color, very comic booky, which is cool, but I like the darker blue, and that's the only change we made. The last time you saw this, I still had, I think I had started working on the rope, and I had quite a bit more work to do with regard to her putting in her skin color, I guess you'd call it. Anyway, this one I actually worked on as much as I could before we left. So I think I spent a good at least 2 to 3 nights working on it. And just so I could make sure we had some progress. But this is the way it looks now. So if you can see, I've filled in the rope it's all yellow where it needs to be yellow. And I filled in the top of her flesh tones here in her arm. And I also started on her right leg. As you're looking at it, let me look. I have to look over there because she's holding it up over there. I never know why she holds these up because you never see it. You see her putting them down, but you never see it. But that's okay. Anyway.
The logic doesn't have to logic.
So yeah, the right leg. I started doing some work on the right leg. It looks like a chicken thigh if you think about it. Maybe a chicken leg. I don't know. You could I don't know. Perhaps it's not. Anyway, with that said, I have nothing useful to add, except when we talk about the stuff we'll be circling back to. Other than that, the action figure that's up there is Colossus. He's an X-Men. I've always wanted a Colossus, but they're in a high demand. This is a new release based on the Deadpool movies, or movie 4 if you want. And I got a chance to get him, so I did. And I think he's a really cool character. Anyway, so that's who the action figure is. Okay, back to cross stitching.
Okay, so I am next going to show you my monthly morning stitch for October. And my monthly morning stitch for October was Autumn Creek Mill by Luca S. It's a kit. I am using the kit fabric and floss. The fabric is an 18 count Aida, and the floss is Anchor Floss. So the last time you saw this, it was a brand new start, and I had maybe 700-ish stitches in it. And all you really saw was a little bit of a corner of like pink, sunrisey, sunsetty kind of sky. So I did get some more time on this before the end of October, and here's where it is right now. So as you can see, I put in a fair bit more of this pink and orange morning or evening sky. I'm not sure which it is. And then also began stitching the first of the hot air balloons here in the corner. There are many more hot air balloons to put in over the life of this project, but I was really excited to actually get to one of the elements of the piece that's not just pure background. So not a ton of progress, but I'm not expecting a lot of progress on my monthly morning stitches. It's whatever I can put in before I start my work day. And so this one is now going away and will not come out again until I think June of next year is the next time I will come out for a month of attention when I have morning stitching time. So that is Autumn Creek Mill. Okay, the next WIP I have to show you, actually the last WIP, is Rose Trellis In. Sorry, brain fart. Rose Trellis In. This is by Heaven and Earth Designs, and it is my full coverage, my primary full coverage project. I am stitching this on a piece of 28 count white Lugana, 2/1, using a combination of half stitch and continental stitch. So the last time you saw this, I was close to finishing the front steps. I had started stitching in the flower pots, the yellow and white flower pots, and then also the big pink flower pot that are along the right side of the steps. I'd started stitching in this kind of green bush that's next to the stairs, and then had also made some progress on stitching the gentleman who's sitting on the front porch having tea. So this is where it is right now. Now it looks like I've made a lot of progress, and to a certain degree I have, but bear in mind that this project had one full rotation after you saw it last. And I've actually spent a couple of days putting in another roughly 500-600 stitches on it over the last couple of days. So as you can see, I am fully finished with the steps and the flowers. Here I have almost finished stitching in this kind of this post at the end of the railing here. I've now completely finished stitching in this couple in this middle section of the house on the porch, and started stitching over into this side. You can now very clearly see this green and white striped chair. But for me, one of the things that's been really exciting is to be really putting in some good stitching on the Rose Trellis In sign here in the center of the design. And you can actually start to see the words rose and trellis emerging in stitches. I still have a fair bit to do to get those in, but you can see it coming out. You've got this pretty bright red heart here. And then some of this background and grass under the sign. I've also done a fair bit of stitching here in this walkway that trails away from the steps. So this is really beautiful. The sections I'm working in right now are really heavy with confetti. So it's slow going, but it is beautiful, beautiful stitching. And I'm really, really enjoying working on this one and getting into some of these elements. So this one's been fun. Okay, so as I said, that is all the WIPs that we have to show you, but I do have one new start to show you. And this is a very minimal new start, but I did get to start a new project for my November monthly morning stitch. And this is a project that feels kind of special to me. So this project is called Not Forgotten. It is another Luca S kit. And it is just this beautiful, I'm interpreting it as French. I think it's got a French feel to it. And I think given the subject matter, it's intended to be French, but this kind of beautiful rural household in a field of poppies with beautiful trees behind it. And I've had this kit for a while. I think I first saw it when Kyle Reckemeyer was still making Flosstube videos, and he showed this kit on his channel. He hadn't started it yet, but I just thought it was stunning. And so I added it to my collection, but I've wanted to start it for a long time. And to me, it just felt like a really appropriate stitch to work on in November, because for me, it's very much a reminder of Veterans Day here in the United States, Remembrance Day in the Commonwealth countries, and you know, just kind of an important moment to think about those who have sacrificed, made the ultimate sacrifice in wars. So anyway, this is Not Forgotten, and it will be my monthly morning stitch going forward for November and May. And May, I think, is probably obvious for those of you in the United States, because that's when we we celebrate Memorial Day as well. So this is my very small start. I don't even have 1,000 stitches in this yet. So I started it, I put a few stitches in right before we left on our vacation and picked it up again and have worked on it a little bit over the past week since we've been back. But as you can see, I started up in the top left corner as I normally do, and I'm working in the sky and have started to get a little bit into the trees in the background. So this one I will only get one more stitching session on before it's time to start rolling into my new project for December. But I'm really delighted that this is now a work in progress. So that is my start on Not Forgotten by Luca S. And I think, who's the art by? John Bradley. Okay, so I will give you a quick rundown of what we're going to be working on over the next couple of weeks before we come back to visit with you again. I am going to spend a few more days working on Rose Trellis Inn. And then, as I said, I am heading off to London. So I am taking my wildcard project, which is Cabin Fever by Dimensions, with me on my trip to London. After that, I'm going to spend some time working on Die Farben Venedig again, and let's see how much progress I can make on that. Gary, of course, is going to continue to plug away on Wonder Woman and Louis Armstrong. And so that's what we kind of have coming up for us stitching wise over the next couple of weeks. So if stitching is all you are interested in, this is your stopping off point. Thanks so much for coming to spend time with us and checking in with us on what we've been working on. We hope that you've been enjoying some stitching while you've been watching, and we really appreciate you sharing some of your time with us. If you're interested in hearing about our holiday in Kenya, then stick around, because this is the part of the video where we'll talk to you a little bit about that. So I think we're just going to kind of tag team this and kind of jump in and stories and whatnot for a few minutes and tell you a little bit about what we did. So we spent 2 full weeks in Kenya, and we kind of split our time between sort of inland areas and the coast. So we spent a week on the coast and then a week inland.
Those are called outland areas.
Shush. They are not. So we mentioned in our last video that we were going to be traveling with some very dear friends of ours, Clark and Amy.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun introducing them.
We like to go on vacation with them every year, and once again, it was just an absolutely wonderful time. They're fantastic to travel with. So we started out in Nairobi. Not surprisingly, we spent a few days there just kind of acclimating and giving everyone a chance to kind of get familiar with the city. So we did a couple, actually our first day there, we did a couple of kind of cultural experiences. So there's a place called Bomas of Kenya that is just on the kind of periphery of Nairobi National Park. And at Bomas of Kenya, it was, first of all, it was really cool because it was, I don't know if there's like a warthog mating season or something, but throughout our trip, we kept seeing warthog mamas with their little warthog piglets, I guess.
Hakuna Matata.
They were so cute. Anyway, so there were little warthogs and their piglets running around on the grounds of the place where we went. But it was really cool because what this place does is they feature like they give you a look at what the traditional building methods and kind of village structure and housing of each of the different tribes in Kenya was like. And most folks obviously are not living in kind of their traditional dwellings anymore. There are still a couple groups that have some traditional dwellings, but it was really interesting to see the similarities and the differences. A lot of tribes would practice polygamy, and so a lot of the little places that we looked at had like a first wives hut and a second wives hut, and then it was like some places had a special hut for the husband and other places didn't. And he just kind of like made his way around to the different wives' huts. And so we had a little bit of fun with that.
Oddly enough, they all had a Gary hut. Don't know what was going on in there, but it's mine.
It was his. So we enjoyed that. And then we also, it was really fantastic because they did a great cultural show that featured some of the traditional songs and dances from the different tribes across Kenya. And so there was this great like dancing and singing troupe that came and performed a lot of these, whether it was like a greeting song or a wedding celebration or a war, like the warriors returning. So we got to see a lot of different elements of that. So that was really nice. And then we had kind of a slightly different cultural experience later that night, called the Safari Cats. It's a show at one of the local hotels. And so some amazing acrobatics and dancing, and we really enjoyed that as well. So that was fantastic. Another part of our visit to Nairobi that we really enjoyed, there is an elephant orphanage that's kind of not too far from the Bomas of Kenya as well. It's also on the periphery of the national park. And this group, it's a charitable organization that they find baby elephants that have been orphaned, that are in the wild, that are at risk of dying, rescue them, bring them to the orphanage, and they stay at the orphanage for like, what was it, honey, 7 or 8 years by the time they kind of...
Till they're mature enough.
Yeah.
Then they move them off to herds.
Yeah, so they then help them reintegrate into the wild, but it's adorable. I've been there before, but it's so cute because they bring out 2 different age groups of babies, and the babies come running in because they know they're going to get their bottles. They get whatever milk it is that elephants get, baby elephants, and they're in these massive baby
It's probably
bottles.
goat milk.
It's not goat milk.
There were goats everywhere.
Can you imagine milking that many goats to feed baby elephants?
There were goats everywhere.
Anyway, the baby elephants, they like have these massive bottles and they're adorable. And so we got to watch them. There was one that was particularly gassy. That was, it was horrible. Anyway, they were super cute. And so we learned about the elephants.
Yeah, everybody blamed it on the elephants.
Oh my goodness. They were so cute. We learned about the babies and the caretakers. And so that was lovely. And then we also visited, there's a giraffe center, and we got to feed the giraffes, which was really fun as well. So I think we all really enjoyed that. So then after we finished our kind of first couple days in Nairobi and started acclimating to the time zone, we took our safari to the Masai Mara. So we did like a 4-day safari, and that was just fantastic. That's another thing I've done on previous visits to Kenya, but this was just really, really special. So we actually got to stay in the park, in the Masai Mara Reserve, and we stayed in a very small camp on the banks of the Mara River, at one of the prime crossing locations during the annual migration. So we were actually there after the migration had ended. So we didn't get to see that, but it was fantastic because it's a lower season in the park. So there's not as many tourists there at that time. So I think that made for a much nicer experience, but we saw some really cool things. We saw a cheetah eating his very recent kill. He had killed an impala. Words are hard. And it dragged it off into the bush, so we got to see the cheetah.
We got to hear the cheetah. She's only telling you half the story. Remember, every video you ever see, 51% of what you're perceiving is audio. We got to hear the cheetah eating this thing. It was like somebody with no manners and a whopper or something. It was just insane. Of course, I'm not saying they should have manners. I'm just saying it was a hearing thing too. I'm not going to make the noise.
No, thank you. We also saw something that's a very rare thing to see. We got really lucky and saw a mother leopard and her cub. One of the mornings that we were out, that was very exciting.
So are we gonna talk about everything that we saw?
No. I'm
All
trying
right, just checking.
No, I'm not gonna.
Because you're literally going down the list.
I know we're not gonna talk about everything we saw. I'm just
We
talking
saw
about
a
some
lot.
highlights. We saw a lot.
We saw ostriches. We saw elephants.
We saw lions.
Lions.
Lots of lions.
We're not going to tell you what we saw the lions do,
It's unspeakable.
but we will tell you they did it a number of times in a short period, a short window there.
You guys,
It could have been eating.
I have a picture of, because the vehicle that we were in did not have windows. It was a windowless.
Yeah, windowless Land Rover.
And the lions, I have a picture of Gary sitting right next to the window, looking down, taking a picture of the lions that are right beside the vehicle.
Yeah,
Like
you don't reach out.
No, he was like 2 feet from being able to touch them or something.
I had to use a fairly wide angle, 11, I think I was at 11. I have an 11 to 16 millimeter, which is like that, where like 100 millimeter would be like that. So I had to use one of those so I could get both the cats in the shot, but I still managed to get the tail end of the Jeep in there. They were that close. But yeah, you fight the urge to reach out and touch because you draw back a nub. And it's your own fault.
And then it makes it really hard to cross stitch when you get home.
Yeah.
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 One other thing we did while we were out on the safari, our driver found a really big herd of elephants. It's called a parade of elephants, actually. And they were parading. And so he just took
They were
us.
throwing beads.
They were not.
It's like Narlands. Sorry. It popped in the head.
Yeah, it was great visual. So anyway, he took us in among the elephants and we kind of drove in along their parade, which was really a cool experience.
We literally, the way to think about it is we're in this open air vehicle. We had like a shell top and all that kind of stuff. You could stand up, but there were no windows. There were no plastic zippers. There were nothing. And our driver was skillful enough. He got us in the middle of the parade, and there were elephants passing us on the left, passing us on the right. Baby elephants, old elephants. It was
coming up from behind and elephants out ahead.
Yeah, it was amazing.
It was amazing.
Yeah. And giraffes. We saw a lot of giraffes.
I love giraffes.
We wouldn't be able to name everything we saw.
The only one of the big five we didn't see was a rhino, which, and our driver really tried hard to find us a rhino, but apparently there's only like 20 to 30 rhinos in the entire Masai Mara Preserve. I've seen them in Nairobi National Park because they have a lot more there. So, but we saw a ton of other stuff. It was really fantastic. We did have a little bit of a scary moment our first night in the camp because where we were staying on the river, there were hippos that lived down in the river.
There were lots of hippos.
Lots of hippos.
We saw lions eating hippos.
We did. We saw a lion eat. 2 lions eating a hippo.
It was a foodie trip.
They ate. We ate. Nobody was hungry. Actually, we did basically eat our way across Kenya. Oh my word.
But I still lost weight.
Me too.
The heat. The heat is something. Let me tell you about the heat.
When we get to the coast, we will talk about the heat. It was a marked difference when you get to the coast. Basically, yes. I'm
showing her the time.
He's showing me the time because we have the camera has to be reset.
We have an older camera.
So our first night on the safari, we're staying in a tent on the banks of the river. And the guys that run the camp had warned us, if you need to leave your tent for any reason after dark, flash a light, and a security guy that carries, weapons and lights and all of this will come and escort you wherever you need to go, because after dark, the hippos come out of the river and it's very, very dangerous for you to be out without a security person with you. And they also warned us, in the wee hours of the morning, the hippos will come up close to the tents and you may hear a hippo outside your tent eating, or more than one hippo. So it was 2 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah.
And Gary, I don't know if you intentionally woke me up. I think you did.
Yeah, because there was a creature outside. I didn't know who it was.
Or
Could
is
have
it
been that leopard we were talking about earlier, looking for a tasty dessert or
morsel?
something. I don't know.
There was at least one hippo right outside our tent.
Yeah, we did not shine a light out there, and we did not poke our heads out there. But just based on what we were hearing, whatever it was, it couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 feet from our zipper door.
We did not.
But here's the thing, and I didn't know this, and I guess it's true. Hippos can't climb stairs, so so we thought all we needed was a stepladder and we'd be okay. But anyway, there were stairs up to our room, so if in fact they can't climb stairs, we were safe. But I don't know.
Yeah, it was funny because the tent is on this elevated platform, and like you don't always think super clearly in the wee hours of the morning, and he's like, how do we call for help? How do we call security? And I was like, well, hippos can't climb stairs. And he's like, are you sure? And I said, well, I don't think they can. And so of course they can't, but we then had to ask the people who ran the camp when we were at breakfast the next morning, and they were polite enough not to laugh at us that we had to confirm that yes, in fact, a hippo cannot climb stairs.
Yeah.
So, yep.
Yeah.
I think the only other thing I'll say about our safari is getting to and from the Masai Mara, we flew, and you fly in very small planes. We also had like the shortest flight known to man. We had a 5-minute flight between our airstrip and the next airstrip before going back to Nairobi. And when they announced it's a 5-minute flight, we were all like, did we all hear that correctly? And it was in fact 5 minutes. So that was that. Okay, so that was it for kind of the inland portion of the trip. And then after we finished that, we flew to the coast and we started in a place called Lamu. So Lamu is kind of, it's on the northern coast of Kenya, and it's actually an island. And it's a pretty special place. It's actually a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So the settlement of Lamu was actually founded in the 12th century. And it's one of the, I think it might actually be the oldest and best preserved Swahili settlement that there is. And you can really see a very distinct Middle Eastern influence in Lamu. It's very unique because it was an area that was a very heavy trading center with ships from the Middle East would come down and they would trade with the Swahili people on Lamu and go back and forth. And so you can see a real kind of cultural mashup that has happened in that region. So it was really interesting. Like we ended up staying in Lamu Old Town, which is very old. And the buildings are very close together. So when you kind of think about these really old cities that were built with, just like narrow passageways and so on, that's Lamu. It's very unique. It's friggin' hot. Oh my word. Just like stupidly hot with really high humidity. It was hot. But it was a really cool, really unique place. We didn't stay there very long. We only stayed there 2 days and then moved on to another part of the coast. But I think my favorite thing that we did there was we did an excursion where we went on a dhow, and a dhow is an old trading vessel. And so we went out on this dhow ride, and they took us across to Manda Island, and they've got a lot of mangrove forest on Manda Island. And we visited an old settlement that has been abandoned called Takwa, and we visited the ruins there. They were abandoned a couple hundred years ago, I think, because all of a sudden, and they have theories as to why, but there's not really as far as I know, a scientifically sound, here's what happened. But it used to be a place that had fresh water, and all of a sudden the water became salty and nobody could live there anymore. So everybody relocated. So anyway, we visited these ruins. It was so hot. It was really hot that day. But that was really, really interesting, really unique. And then we just really enjoyed like riding the dhow through the waterways, and the guys that owned it took fantastic care of us. They brought snacks, like Swahili snacks, and so we had this. I mean, we filled up on snacks. We didn't even need dinner that night. They had samosas, which samosas are ubiquitous. It's like a very popular Swahili snack. It's like a little, if you don't know, it's like a little triangular pocket that's stuffed usually with meat of some kind and, other stuff. And they had fish samosas that were like, if a samosa could be life-changing, those samosas would have been life-changing. They were amazing. And then we sailed through the sunset on the dhow, and then came back to Lamu under the stars. And that was one of my favorite things that we did. I don't know. You looked like you were going to say something. So I was.
Well, I don't know. I figured I'd get a chance at some point.
No, well, that's why you pop in.
Take it easy.
No, I'm all worked up now.
Yeah, the boat was awesome. We started in the morning, and it went through to the evening. We actually did a sunset. So essentially, we were on this old trading ship, and they were using their sails, and we're in the Indian Ocean, just sailing around. It was. We stayed close to the shore, but we were just sailing around. It was pretty nice. Very special thing to experience, I thought. Lamu itself was a very interesting place. Lots of donkeys.
Oh yeah. Forgot about that.
Yeah. So anyway, it was just a very interesting place. You could tell that it's been on the water for arguably centuries. I would imagine almost everybody who lives close to that is familiar with the waves and how they interact with stuff. It's just a really interesting place to be.
Yeah. I forgot about the donkeys. Yeah, that's one of the things that's unique about Lamu is there's only like a couple of motorized vehicles and a few motorbikes, but everybody either gets around on foot or on donkey. And so you see these little donkeys and these guys like that are really too tall to be riding a donkey.
Or motorcycles.
Yeah.
Motorcycles are everywhere. Everywhere we went, people were riding motorcycles. They're not like big Harley Davidsons or anything like that. There's a lot of motorbikes.
Yeah, Kenya's got a lot of motorbikes. So yeah, after we're in Lamu, then we went to a town that's further down the coast, and that's called Malindi, but it's on the mainland, and spent a couple of days there. I think Malindi was my favorite place on the coast. So one of the things that was nice is that Malindi is not really a tourist town, and Lamu and the other place that we'll talk about that we went to are geared more for tourists. And Malindi's just kind of like everyday people living their lives on the coast in a city. So one of the things, we did spend a day with a local tour guide there who he took us to a local market where people who actually live there every day, do some of their shopping. So and I've visited markets like these before for work, but it was
open air markets.
Yeah, an open air market. So lots of fresh produce. You and Amy took more pictures, and Clark and I were just kind of wandering around.
That's what photographers do.
That's what photographers do. Lots of little kids, and of course the kids are always excited to get their pictures with Mzungu who visit. So it's the Swahili word for a foreigner is a Mzungu.
Yeah, well, for some foreigners, I'll just say that.
I will say it was funny because over the course of the trip, like, people kept coming up to Gary and he kept getting progressively more tan as we were getting more sun. And people kept coming up and they were like, "Hey, brother." Local folks.
I fit in no matter where I am.
That's true. You're very adaptable.
Like butter.
Like butter. Anyway, we went to the local market. I really enjoyed that. And then we visited a place called Robinson Island. Took a little boat out to Robinson Island and had a very fresh seafood lunch on the island.
Yeah, I think they just offed the stuff before we got there, or I don't know.
Yeah, like that morning.
Yeah, they were walking around not long before we got there. They were just fine. They're not just fine anymore.
Oh my goodness.
There were these fish. Somebody said, what are they? I said, piranha.
Well, I mean,
They weren't piranha.
They weren't piranha, but that fish had teeth in its mouth.
Yeah, there's a picture.
Yeah.
You're looking at it right now.
You're looking at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was really nice. We had like one heck of a rainstorm that we had to wait out.
But it didn't last long.
No, it didn't last long. And then we walked up onto the beach, and that was the first time I'd ever seen like crabs in the wild.
The free range crabs is what they call them.
They were living crabs, and they were like, this beach was covered with crabs. They were everywhere.
Fortunately, they were living.
Yes. So that was fun. And then after that, we went to a place called Hell's Kitchen.
Oh, yeah.
That was really neat.
Yeah, that was... I never listened to the science stuff, but it was very clear that that's been there for a while. And wind and rain and the contents of whatever's in the soil there are really making some very interesting things. You'll be seeing slides,
Yeah.
pictures of this go by. You think that the rock that you're looking at is like really solid, but it's not. If you put your hand on there and you pull it away, you get this, your hand will
It's
be
like
covered
paste.
in like clay.
Yeah.
And it looks like you wounded yourself, but you didn't. Yeah.
It was it sulfur was one of the things.
Yeah.
And then I forget, there was like a sulfur and
Probably some other minerals.
some other stuff.
Yeah.
It
A
was
few other
really
things.
things. It was a little bit. It had just rained there as well, and because we went during the short rainy season, and so we didn't contend with a lot of rain, but on that day we had rain, and so the ground was pretty slick underfoot because, like he said, it wasn't like a lot of stone. It was like this clay, and we climbed down into this canyon. It was beautiful, though. It was really beautiful. So I really enjoyed that as well. So that was Malindi, and then the last place that we went to we hired a local driver to take us from Malindi to the southern coast of Kenya, to a town called Diani, which is again more of a very typical beachy tourist town, and Diani is supposed to have the most beautiful beaches in Kenya. But the guy that we had a very interesting driver who took us from Malindi to Diani. It was like a 4-hour drive, 3.5-hour drive.
It was a long drive.
It was a long drive. So, imagine you've got 4 grown adults, and even though we traveled with carry-on baggage rather than checked bags, that's 4 adults with all of their baggage for one vehicle. And so we had said, we need a driver that can accommodate 4 adults and their baggage. And this guy shows up and he's got his kid with him. And I was like, there's not enough seats. So it took some creative, like, getting things in place to make sure everybody had a seat. And then he kept he didn't have gas in the car. And so we had to stop and get gas. And then he wanted to reload his M-Pesa, and so he kept stopping at like a bunch of different shops to try and find somebody that could Anyway, we were like, what is going on? I'd never had anything like that happen, and I was just like, welcome to Kenya. This is real life. But anyway, so we drove down to Diani and stayed there for a couple of days. And that was nice. We did some snorkeling while we were there.
It was really, really touristy, though.
Yeah.
And that was, sometimes that's not a factor, but it was pretty much a factor this time.
Yeah.
There were, where you went to snorkel, there's like multiple boats and people all over the place. It was a little bit different than what we were used to for the rest of it, but that's only because we had been spoiled, I guess.
Yeah.
But it was worth it. It was just much more touristy. On the beaches they had camel rides, so if you wanted to ride a camel, you could. Did I ride one? No, I already did that. I did that in Egypt, and that was enough for me. back in the 80s. Some of you might not have even been born yet when I was riding a camel, looking at the pyramids. That has nothing to do with our trip, so...
So we'll move on. One of the other things, and this was one of the things that we had been really looking forward to, it was kind of the capstone of our trip, and that is there is an underground cave that they've created this sort of this restaurant in Diani. And I had found out about it when we were planning the trip, and so I made us a reservation, and it was one of the things that the other Amy who was traveling, she and I were both really excited to go to this place. And I thought it was really, really great. We really enjoyed it. The food was delicious. The experience was great. And it was just a really neat and unique experience. So,
yeah, we didn't really do much from there.
No.
We did take a train ride, which is nice, but it was a long train ride. We probably would have been better off taking a shorter one, but it was roughly like 4.5 to 5 hours on a train. Anyway,
it was a long train ride.
It was a long train ride.
I will say we were really fortunate on this trip that like there were only maybe 1, 2, at most 3 things that I would say, oh, I wish we'd done that differently, or I wish we'd stayed somewhere else. But on the whole, it was like with just a couple of exceptions, it was a great trip, and I wouldn't change a thing. So
on the whole, we spent 2 weeks in Kenya going down the coast, swimming and walking around in the Indian Ocean. So in the end, the 2 or 3 things that just didn't work out, that's part of everything. We were just incredibly lucky to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And enjoy it.
Yeah, it was a really great adventure, and yeah, like Gary said, we felt really incredibly lucky to have had that opportunity. So
showing her the time again.
Yeah, he's like,
I only show her this because we have a deal. If it's over 60 minutes,
oh no,
I get an action figure.
Oh, I'm running out of time. Oh my goodness. Anyway, that's my cue to stop talking. But anyway, thank you so much for letting us share our adventure with you. This is certainly kind of the trip of a lifetime. We don't do a big trip like this. We only do a big trip like this every probably 4 years, 5 years, because
it ain't cheap.
It ain't cheap. But we really had a great time. Our friends Clark and Amy had a great time. You know, once again, it's who you travel with matters. Like it can make or break your trip, and we can't say enough about how great an experience it is to travel with such nice people.
You have to be able, you got to find somebody to travel with where you can be you, because you're not going to be away from those people for a long time. You're going to be like this basically for weeks. So you need to have a good rapport. You know your friends. You know which ones I'm talking about.
Yeah. You're like, I'll travel with you, not with you.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what?
No, I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna say that.
Okay.
It's political.
Okay.
But it was funny.
Yeah.
You
can tell me later.
We're gone 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
You had to go there.
You prompted me.
I did. Well, on that note, we hope that you are all well. Thank you so much for those of you that have stayed till the end. Thank you. We hope you enjoyed hearing about our trip, seeing our pictures. Next time around, it shouldn't be quite so long a video. We won't have a trip to talk about, and it should just be a little bit less stitching. So anyway, be well, be safe, and we will look forward to seeing all of you very soon. Happy stitching.
Bye.
Bye.